There are three kinds of writing advice. There's writing advice about how to write better at like the line level. There's writing advice about how to write a better story or how to tell a good story. And there's writing advice about how to actually do the thing, like how to get words on page and be a writer generally. Now, I think that the third kind is kind of useless, which is ironic because of course this is a video about the third kind. We're gonna get there, just wait. Storytelling, the theory anyways, is pretty universal for Western storytelling. Writing on a line level is subjective. It has a lot of things that we all agree is good. When we come to like writing routines and how to write a lot of words and all that kind of stuff, there's stuff that works for people that like can be shared and techniques, but a lot of that writing advice does not work for me. A lot of videos like this one say things like, have a routine, wake up at 5 a.m., wear a hat that reminds you of your character, always sit in the same spot. Well, none of those work for my writing style, my lifestyle, literally at all. My job is bananas, sometimes I work in the evenings, sometimes in the mornings, never really in the afternoons, but then I like to go to the gym, so it doesn't, it changes. My characters don't wear hats, it can be very difficult to be like, okay, how do I actually get words? How do I find tips that are actually helpful for me? And so that's what this video is. It's telling you over the past 2 months, I've been drafting a book, first draft, no outline, completely pantsing it mostly. And I'm now at like 46,000 words. I started writing it at the end of May. So we're 2 months in. I'm hoping to finish it in the next 2 weeks. And I have been getting into the drafting mode and finding what is really helping me. So yeah, enough preamble, let's talk about it. The number one thing that I find helpful in getting more words on the page is having a goal. But this is not radical, right? Have a writing goal, obviously. But I have kind of two goals. I have a real word count, which is to accomplish my deadline of when I want the book to be finished. So I want my book to be finished July 27th, which according to my little novel pad auto tracker thingy that I use, it means today's goal is 1,723 words. But then there's the psychological goal. So your real goal is what you need, and your psychological goal is what you commit to. So for me, for example, if I was to say I have to write 1,700 words today, that feels like a lot. That feels like a lot of words. It's gonna take a really long time. So in my head, I have a psychological word count goal that if I hit that word count, I can pat myself on the shoulder. And for me, that psychological word count is 500 words. So I'm aiming for a minimum of 500 words every day. I want to get 1,700 words every day. And ideally, I will get a little bit more than that. In fact, I've actually changed my goal. So originally I wanted to have 70,000 words by the 27th, but I fell behind and it was saying I had to write over 2,000 words every day. And seeing that on the screen, I'm like, I can't possibly do it. It's too overwhelming. So your, real goal has to be realistic, obviously. And it has to be something like, yeah, I can do that in a day on the regular basis. But then that psychological goal is super duper helpful because you're like, okay, if I can do 500 words, I'm happy with myself. I've had a productive day. So that's tip number one, is having your two different word counts. Tip number two is that your psychological word count should be your hardest words. Let me explain this concept. I have it written down. The first 500 words for me are the hardest. It's when I'm most likely to get distracted, when I'm trying to get into the scene, when I'm trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing. And if I get past those 500 words, then I hit a flow state and I start going. Now it's 500 words for me. It might be 200 for you or 1,000. Oh, sweetie, I really hope it's not 1,000, but maybe it is. Maybe you're just that cool. If so, once I hit that word count, then I'm in the story and in the flow, and it's much, much easier to get the rest of those words. And so once I hit that 500, 600 word, then I'm zooming, and I even have a psychological thing of oh, I'm in it, I'm good now, and I want to keep going. The slog is done. So that's kind of where you derive that second goal, is from pay attention, basically. Like, pay attention, do some writing, watch your word count, and notice when you stop getting distracted. Notice when you're like, yes, and it feels like it's coming really easy. And notice that for a while, and eventually you'll see that kind of my threshold word count is X. And you can use that to build your word count in step 1. Next point is to accomplish the psychological word count, number 3, is to accomplish that as early in the day as possible. Again, it's just for me something that like unlocks in my brain of, okay, we got this, like we're in the story. And I find it much easier once I've done those first 500, if I do that in 30 minutes, an hour or something, to come back later in the day, because now my brain is primed for it and be like, oh, I'm just gonna have 20 minutes, let me just throw some more words in here. And that makes it a lot easier. You've also kind of overcome that initial like activation energy. It's very useful. Tip number, that's not number 3, that's number 4. Tip number 4 is to go for a walk either at the beginning or in the middle, or if you have a big word count, like 1,700 words, I say like take a break. It's much nicer to do like a set in the morning, that's your hardest, and then a set when you have a little bit of a break, and then I'll sometimes do like, it's like 11 p.m. I'm like, let me get my words in, dramatically at night. Taking a break in between can be very, very helpful, but the walk part is important, and I want to kind of narrow in on that. I find that I do better writing when I'm walking without earphones or friends. When I have that time in my day that is that just like forward motion, don't need to think about it, and your brain can safely, people say to do this when you're driving too, but like, dude, I don't know if it's safe to let your brain wander like crazy when you're driving, but like that time for your brain to just go on its little imagination journey. And eventually when you're thinking, because your book's in the back of your head, thoughts will come up. Like that's how I came up with the first line for my book, the ideas for everything. You know, I get the most writing done when I build in time. It's usually very helpful at the beginning of a session or in between sessions, or like just generally when you're trying to get a lot of words done, to go for walks or bike rides or whatever without headphones. So you are like alone with your thoughts, so you can like naturally think about your book and get those ideas and brainstorms flowing. I find when I have other things in my head all the time, like other programs, podcasts, voices, etc., I kind of lose track of my own voice, and that of course makes the writing harder. Tip number 5 is at the very start of your writing session, instead of starting with a blank page, go back a couple pages or to the earlier scene or whatever, and do a little bit of light editing in the most recent scene for your first 5 to 10 minutes. I find that very helpful, A, in reminding me where I left off, and B, in like reminding myself that you know how to do this, you're a writer. Sometimes it sucks because you read it back and you're like, God, there's so many typos. You're like, how did I write row when I wanted to write roll? Like that W and the L are not close to each other on the keyboard, literally at all. They're not close to each other. I don't know how I did that, but you get to marvel at your glorious typos. Sometimes typos inspire things, right? Sometimes typos inspire your creativity. But anyways, you're doing the writing, and you're remembering the story, remembering where you left off, and that kind of helps prime my brain to then move forward. So it's not like I'm starting from a blank page and being like, I have no idea what to do. My tip number 6 is the one you're gonna hear all the time, which is not just on your walks, but like while you're writing, turn off your notifications, turn off your phone. I always turn off the internet on my laptop, because otherwise I go to YouTube and I look at my metrics, which is terrible for like numerous reasons. But whatever it is that you check obsessively, make sure you can't do it. Even if like, I find like putting an extra step in there, right? So to like leave my little project and go check YouTube, I have to like exit the program, go to the browser, type a Y, press enter. If I then have to like click the little globe thing, click the Wi-Fi, like enter the network password, it adds too much. And by the time I'm like about to click the thing, I'm like, never mind, I'm just gonna keep writing. That's what you want. You wanna put barriers to yourself in there. Again, not rocket science, that one, but useful. Another thing I found useful similarly along those lines is to use like Pomodoro and use a timer and write as much as you can in like a writing sprint, and then give yourself like the breaks in between to look on your phone or whatever. I have like mixed feelings about this because sometimes if it's like a 30-minute timer and then it stops and you're like, yeah, I can look at my phone, you can still get like pulled back into your phone and out of the story. This time around of the drafting, I found that I'm a little bit more distractible than I was like a few years ago. And so it's better just to go through until I meet whatever goal, or if I do take breaks, to take the breaks to get water, to go for a walk without the phone. What was that? Number 6? Okay. Number 7 is, I can't believe I'm saying this, it's to write every day. I've really noticed a difference between what I'm drafting this year and what I drafted last year. Last year, it took me like 5 or 6 months to draft that book, which is long for me. This one should take about 3.5. And that one took longer, and it was doubly difficult because it was multi-POV, so I was going in and out of people's heads. 6 different characters actually. It was 6 different characters in the first draft. That's bananas. But I was going to edit people's heads, and so switching between heads took me out of the story, and then I would just like leave it for days at a time with nothing, and I would just like forget and have to remind myself what the story was about. And so even if it's like, I'm just gonna open the document, or I'm just going to do my psychological word count today, that is so helpful for the continuity and just the momentum of the story, and to see that progress trucking up so quickly, like, starting with 0 words in May, and it's only mid-July, so 2 months ago I had 0 words, now I have 46,000. I've been really, really consistent recently, like July has been great. There's about 2 days a week I tend not to write, and the rest of them I do, so I say I write every day. I write 5 days, I write 5 days a week, but I mean to write every day, or at least open the document. Usually there's a minus on the days I don't write, because I'll go in and I'll be like, that was a stupid sentence. At least opening the document and refreshing your memory is super duper helpful. And yes, my final tip, which is 8, oh God, is what you are reading and consuming. One of the things that I found interesting, the best tip is actually last. Hold on. The best tip is the 9th one. I'm gonna say 8 because I was thinking about it, but 9th is best, so just wait. The 8th tip is, I find it difficult to read when I'm really into drafting. So I'm either like listening to a podcast I don't care about or rewatching a show. Like, I don't really want to get super invested in other stories because I'm invested in mine, or I'll read tangential things like nonfiction is nice to read, or read something that has a voice similar to mine or that inspires my story. So I try to be very like intentional with what I'm choosing to consume, reading, watching, whatever, when I'm writing, because there's just something in the mindset that like, and I've heard other authors say this too, like when I'm writing, I don't read. Or when I'm writing, I like to read X thing, just so it doesn't like take me out of my story, because I want to be most invested in my characters in my story. And 9, okay. 9 is my favorite tip, and it's something I've learned over the years. The moment something feels boring, or you're like, I don't know why this is in here, it feels hard, it feels like it feels difficult, sit down and say, what is the purpose of what I'm writing right now? Not of the book, like, you should have a why and a purpose for why you're writing your book. Yes, totally. And I find that very motivating as well, is to go back to that original inspiration and be like, why am I doing this? But generally, I mean like the scene, the actual thing you're writing, and say, why is this here? Is it accomplishing at least 2 things? Like dropping hints for an information plot, moving the plot forward, developing characters, going about the theme. If it's not doing at least 2 of those things, drop it. Even if it's in your outline, I would just drop it, skip it, go to the next thing. Skipping stuff, extremely, extremely helpful when you're drafting. And also, I found that if I'm having a hard time writing a scene, it's going to be a completely crap scene anyways. So I may as well just say, this thing should happen, right, placeholder, go to the next thing that's exciting. Another thing to think about with that, to draft things faster, and I am notorious for doing this, and I wish I would follow my own advice here, is along those lines, start in media res, like start in the middle of a scene. So often I'm like, and we're walking up to the thing, and I'm like trying to picture the setting where we are. And so I write like a couple paragraphs of description of the setting, or I'm trying to recapture a certain vibe or something like that. And I find writing description very, very difficult. I like dialogue, I like action, it's easy. And so when I spend a lot of time writing that description to get me into the scene, A, it's a lot of energy. B, I'm probably gonna drop it because it's a first draft and pretty much everything gets rewritten anyways. And C, like I don't need to be writing these words. These aren't super important for my initial first draft, which is getting the story out. Obviously, I've heard debates about this of like, if the writing is bad, that's not good. Like you should take the time to maybe not write a completely crap first draft, you know? But you also want to get it on the page. So I'm of two minds of this where like, I don't want it to be completely terrible and not make any sense at all. But at the same time, I don't want to get picky, and I'll be more likely to just jot something down that needs to change versus writing it. That being said, the voice and stuff is super important. And having the emotions there, even if they're not like perfectly written in the prose yet, having the emotions and those things there that it's just like a scaffolding is important. So it's kind of something to weigh, but you can also, especially in the first draft, like start later than you think you need to and end earlier, because that really gives you a chance just to get the meat on the page before moving on. And that's the tip that I wish I would follow more often, and that I am trying to get myself to do more, because yeah, it's very helpful to be like, okay, I don't have to show them swimming, transitioning, doing whatever, like let's just, here's the first line of the thing that's important. Like we're starting when they're already arguing, that kind of thing, versus like the build up to the argument. Or we're starting like at the table versus walking up to the building, going inside, trying to find your friend, sitting at the table. Maybe, and there are places where you want to do that. Like maybe there's an assassin sitting at one of the tables and you want your character to like notice them on the way in, but you can add that later. Just get through the like meat of the scene first. So there we go. That is how I am finding, that is how I am writing a lot of words relatively quickly. If you have tips for things that help you to do that, please let me know them below. If you're drafting something right now, let me know what you're writing. I'm writing a YA contemporary thriller. Would love to hear what you're doing. Like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Nicole Wilbur, and I will see you next time.